about 2018, I was working in my office one day and I got a call from an administrator at a little college in Minnesota called St. Olaf College. It happened to be where I went to college. And I thought, well, they're calling for fundraising, right? And that's the only reason colleges ever call me in general. When I talked to her, though, she told me that she wanted to talk to you about to get a mental health consultation for their college, for its college. So I found that pretty interesting. I wondered why she was the financial officer for the school, wanted to have a mental health consultation for the college. So I went to St. Olaf and spent some time there and visited with the people there and some the students there. And I found that, like every college that I've been to and that I was in college, the kids looked young, vibrant, and looked like they were having fun. But it was really clear that there was another group of people, and some of the same vibrant people that really weren't having fun, and that were really pretty miserable. So I began to think about, is there something generationally different? Because at St. Olaf College at that time, 30% of the student body was involved in psychotherapy of some sort. And when I was in college, this was of course in our ages, there were very few people who went to psychotherapy. Something different was going on. I was trying to understand what it was. When I began to make a hypothesis that maybe there's something different going on with the group that this slide calls the iGen, or Gen Z is the other term that is used. So just kind of thinking about this, people like me, the boomers, some of you, the Generation X are the group that was born between 65 and 79. The millennials were born between 80 and 84, or 94 roughly, and then this new generation of kids was born between 1985 and 2012. And I became convinced that there's a mental health crisis, particularly involving this Generation Z population that involved people, both in and out of college. I was talking to kids and the people who were involved in colleges, but I became convinced as I began to look at the data that it wasn't just kids in college, it was all kids in that generation. So I began to wonder, what's going on, and is there something to do about it? And by the way, the reason that St. Olaf wanted to talk to me, and the reason it was a financial person, was that it was costing them so much money to do psychotherapy that they didn't have enough funds to hire teachers. That was kind of interesting how it got people's attention. It wasn't that they were so concerned about mental health, they were concerned about it. So what is an epidemic? Epidemics are an unusual occurrence in a community or region of a disease, specific health-related behavior, or other health-related events clearly in excess of expected occurrence. So is there a mental illness epidemic in this age group? One of the things I did was I had a friend who was the head of psychiatry at Boynton Health Center, which is the student health center at the University of Minnesota. And I asked him, are you guys seeing a problem with your students that see lots of mental illness issues? And he said that they had recently done a survey of incoming freshmen, and 40% of the students in that survey anticipated that they would use mental health services while at the University of Minnesota. So University of Minnesota is a school of about 50,000, 60,000 people, and 40% of that is 20,000 roughly. It's a lot of mental health care, and he said they were overwhelmed. They had nowhere near the number of therapists and the psychiatrists and other people needed to manage that. So one of the things here, this slide shows enrollment over compared to students seeking mental health care. So between 2009 and 2015, enrollment in this college, the college represented by this graph, was 5.6%, but the increase in students seeking mental health care was 29.6%, so way outpaced enrollment. Then I went to there's a center called the Collegiate Mental Health Center, and they had a report for 2018, which I took a look at. And they showed a couple of graphs I just kind of reviewed really quickly. This graph, you can see on the vertical axis on the left side is percentage, and the horizontal axis on the bottom is years. And you can see between the far left of the horizontal axis, which was 2009 and 2000, between 2010 and 2011, and 2017, 2018, the number who attended counseling for mental health concerns increased from 46% to 54%. So in this academic year, 2017, 2018, 54% of college students attended counseling for mental health concerns, even more than the University of Minnesota anticipated. This slide, this graph looks at people who purposefully injured themselves without suicidal intent. And you can see that that went from 21.8% in the, say, 2010 year to 27.8% in 2017. There's a 27.5% increase in self-destructive behavior, which to me suggests that more college students were developing personality disorders. Increased self-destructive behavior is I think a way of measuring evolving personality disorders. It shows inability to cope with circumstances. Later we'll discuss possibly why Generation Z or the iGen have coping skills and maybe just developing more dysfunctional personality traits. This slide looks at those who seriously considered attempting suicide. You can see it went from 24% in 2010 to 35.8% in 2017. 49% increase. Right? And this looks at the number of students who actually made a suicide attempt, going from 8% to 10.3%. So that, what struck me was that means that in 2017 and 2018, over 10% of college students had actually made, not just thought about, but actually made a suicide attempt at some point in their lives, which had increased 28% over 2010. This is a graph that was put together by a lady named Twang. She's she calls herself a generational psychologist. So she does a lot of writing and studying about different generations, like what did the boomers do, what did the millennials do, what is Gen Z, or what she calls them, the iGen. And I just want you to notice the vertical axis is the percentage in the past month, the horizontal axis is years. And then the bottom line, the dotted black line, is people above 50 years old. The gray line is people between 26 and 49 years old. And the top black line is people between 18 and 25. And if you look at this, they parallel each other, although the younger you are, the higher you start. But in 2013, something happened, right? You see that? I mean, all of a sudden, in that age group from 18 to 25, the line all of a sudden goes up, right? And so what's that all about? What's going on? One of the things that Twang says is that happens to be the year that over half the population in the United States had iPhones. So just one hypothesis. This is another similar slide that looks at percent of major depressive episode in the past 12 months by age group. And you can see a similar pattern. The older groups are pretty flat. The younger group really takes off around 2013. And there's another dotted line that's above the 18 to 25-year-old group that is even younger than the 12 to 17-year-old group. So you can see that they even went up faster than the 18 to 25-year-old group. Again, startling, striking. You look at this and you say, what's going on? I mean, this is a big deal. So I ask you, over the past 5 years, have you seen an increase in the following issues among your children or in high school or first year of post-secondary school? And I'm just going to ask you a quick survey, just raise your hand. Anxiety and stress. Anxiety disorders, like generalized anxiety disorder. Problematic use of media and technology. Mood disorders. I don't need to go through, you can see all of you guys are green. Bullying, cyberbullying, substance use disorders, suicide behavior, and sexual assault and rape. Interestingly, if you look at the graphs for each of these things, I throw this question at you. Which do you think doesn't go up as fast? There's two that don't go up as fast as the others. Just take a guess. Cut this cube. Okay. Actually, the two that didn't go up as fast were substance use disorder. It was already high, but it didn't really increase a lot. And sexual assaults. They were already high, and they didn't go up a lot. So I just thought that was sort of interesting. And does that mean anything either? And, my hypothesis, this is a broad hypothesis, is that the disorders where people are more isolated went up faster, people, and disorders where people are with each other, drinking at a party, we're already going into as much. Okay, so let's talk about suicide in the same vein. So concepts of suicide, things that people consider, things that I consider might trigger suicides, things that I've seen trigger suicides, or actually trigger people thinking about suicide, or certainly mental illness, genetic experiences, bullying, personality disorders, drug use, eating disorders, social isolation, relationship problems, or some sort of existential crisis. I want to postulate to you that depression is not the cause of suicide. And the reason that I believe that is that I'm involved with a treatment-resistant depression clinic that sees lots of people with treatment-resistant depression. Many of them have suicidal thoughts, but we don't see that many suicides. It's actually fairly rare in that population. I think depression can cause hopelessness. It can set the groundwork for suicide. But most suicide attempts seen in psychiatric units are triggered by substance abuse, a temporarily unbearable stressor, like my friends say I'm gay, or found out I was gay, or something like that, or an inability to handle a normal life stressor, like my girlfriend broke up with me. So another Twain chart, and again you can see the two bottom lines are pretty straight, and then the younger group goes up faster. And this is percent of adults with at least one suicide-related outcome, thoughts, plans, or attempts in the last year. Not surprising when you saw that depression went up dramatically after 2013. Suicide did too. So I think it's pretty clear that there's a mental health epidemic in this, particularly in this group, this iGen, Gen Z group, and there's a lot of problems to deal with. And I think it's a little different than other epidemics. With COVID, there's ripple effects, but I think the mental health epidemic's got some really huge ripple effects that are going to affect all of us as we move forward. Obviously, the health of our young people. Secondly, the capacity of the workforce, the ability to function in the workplace. If you're depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, it's harder to function. Ability to function politically and socially. Economics, the cost of healthcare is going up as a result of this. And the possibility of generational decline due to amplification of poor parenting. In other words, these kids eventually become parents, and they may not be very functional to start out with, and now they're parenting. So what I see is, I see us, most of us in our society, sitting like this lady in this chair with her back to this tidal wave, not really recognizing that it's about ready to fall on top of us and really create some major problems. So how do we address this? What can we do? Well, crisis intervention phone lines, kind of a Band-Aid, right? More mental health therapists, another Band-Aid. They're okay, but I think we need to look for the underlying causes of this epidemic. And I think we need to think very seriously as a culture on if or how we're going to address this. Not really, frankly, sure we can, but I think there are things to do. So, this is a cartoon of Santa Claus saying, "Do these pants make my hiney look big?" And Mrs. Claus says, "No, it's all the dang cookies and milk that make your hiney look big." So really, listen, take your head out of the clouds. Deal with reality. It's not your clothes will make you big. It's you who are big, right? And another one, about the ostrich, like getting their head out of the sand. It's time to do that. We've got a problem. So one of the questions that I began to kind of sort out was, and obviously you are asking your own minds, is a mental health epidemic due to more people seeking mental health care who are not as mentally ill? So people who aren't so ill, but just more people seeking mental health care. Or are there more people who have serious mental illness? So those are two different things. And I found one study looking at this, trends in serious psychological stress in outpatient mental health care in the United States. They noticed that the recent increase in outpatient mental health services occurred during a period of decline in serious psychological distress. Now, I find that difficult in some ways because if there's less serious psychological distress, why are we seeing more suicides? It may be things that this study identified as being distressing, but they said they're not distressing, that actually were quite distressing for the people who were seeking mental health care. So why? Increased stress? Possibly. That's one possible idea. Decreased stigma? I think that is true, and I think that is a reason for more people to seek mental health care. Or is there a greater number of people in this generation that lack the competency to deal with problems in their life? I'm going to talk about that notion a little bit. Emotional competence and emotional intelligence. There's a guy named Peter Salome who later became the president of Yale University, and then a grad student of his named Jack Neer first proposed the notion of emotional competency in 1990. And they said emotional competency is a set of skills hypothesized to contribute to accurate appraisal and expression of emotion in oneself and in others, the effective regulation of emotion in self and others, and the use of feelings to motivate, plan, and achieve in one's life. I'm going to dig into that just a little bit deeper. This is a guy named Daniel Goleman who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. Has anybody read that book here? It kind of looks at this issue quite a bit. I think it's worth considering this situation. So he said that emotional intelligence or emotional quotient is the capacity of individuals to recognize their own and other people's emotions, to discriminate between different feelings. Am I sad? Am I angry? Rather than just writing the feeling, and label them appropriately, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. So kind of to graph this out, looking at the left bar, emotional competence, what I see and understand in myself is self-awareness, right? What I see, what I do and say in myself is my self-management of my behavior. What I see and understand in others is social awareness. And what I do and say in others is relationship management. And all of these are very complex interpersonal and individual skills that we sort of assume are a normal part of growing up. That if they don't happen, maybe you don't grow up with quite as many tools as you would otherwise. This is a pyramid looking at sort of levels of emotional competence and how to intervene. On the bottom level of this pyramid is just building positive relationships, positive support in your environment. The second level is creating supportive environments for all children need that. The third level is children now who are at higher risk, and this group of children needs intentional teaching of social skills. And then the last peak of the pyramid are children with really persistent challenges who need professional treatment. We really like to deal with this at the bottom level of this pyramid, right? And at least the bottom two levels, because it gets complex once you get above that, harder to deal with. So I'd like to propose this. This is why I didn't pull this off of an article, that there are risk factors for Gen Z born after 1995 in the development of emotional competence. And I think that all of these are worth considering. They're not all easy to change, and probably many of them are impossible to change. But if we recognize them, we might be able to still do something about them. The first one, and I'm going to go through these in some detail, but there are many single-parent homes. And number two, almost all parents are employed, both moms and dads. Social media is a big issue. Twain called it the iGen for that reason. Video games and video gaming is a big issue with this group of people. Fear of our neighbors, just fear in general of people around us, has increased, I believe. Too much structured play. So we talk about play as a strategy for helping people develop emotional competence. Existential threat. When I wrote this, I said environmental catastrophe. This was actually, the slide was written before 2020. So, what are the existential threats since then? Couldn't miss COVID, right? And now you can't miss nuclear war, or there's more. And then fragmented communities. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about each of these. So many single parent homes. I know that this, I'm not saying we should not have single parent homes. I get it, that this is part of the world we live in. I'm just saying it's an issue we need to deal with because it may be that those situations need some more support in different ways. So this slide just shows that between 1960, the left side of this slide, and 2013, two married parents went from 73% to 46% in families. So just a big drop. And single parents went from 9% to 34%. So there was a big change around, especially looking at the Gen Z, the iGen, between the 1980 graph and the 2013 graph. Second, almost all parents are employed. And that's not going to change either, right? And that's the way the world is going to be. And I get it. I'm generally happy with that, but there's issues with that. So you can see that the percentage of children with at least one stay-at-home parent in the 1970s was 55%. It dropped to 20% in 1995, and it's stayed around that level since then. So what this means, why this is important is because what does it matter if parents are unavailable? Is that a problem? And maybe you're not unavailable if you're both working, but it seems like just statistically, there's got to be less parental involvement if two parents are not involved in their job or have a major commitment to the job. So that leads me to think a little bit about attachment. I want to just talk a little bit about that because I think we really underestimate how important this is in the world we live in. I believe we strongly underestimate it. I think we accept that we're done with it, basically. But I think it's really a big deal. This just shows a parent and their child engaging emotionally, right? It's a beautiful picture. It makes you feel happy looking at it. There's a guy named John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. They were the father and mother of attachment theory. They were in the United Kingdom from the late 50s to the 80s. I happened to get to spend a couple hours with John Bowlby in 1985 when I was a resident. He came to our residency and talked about attachment theory. And I remember at the time I kind of blew it off like that. Well, of course, attachment is important, but he really proved that it was by studying it, and he was really. I was an idiot. I accept that. He was an incredible researcher and probably an important person. And he had a very interesting. When a child has a physically and emotionally safe and nurturing environment, receives comfort when in distress, and is reassured when afraid, he or she will develop a secure foundation. This is called a secure attachment, and is the best type of attachment to promote emotional stability. This is obvious, right? I mean, I think all of you probably get that this is important. And that's why I thought it was a joke. But he proved this, and he showed a few other things in these studies and their influence studies. They said that any type of disruption in a child's secure attachment to his or her primary caregiver can lead to a variety of problems later in life. And this is particularly between the ages of 0 and 4. So I want to just walk through. They studied a large group of young children and looked at different attachment styles and what were the characteristics of those styles. And as I mentioned before, the secure attachment was the best one, of course. Percent of the sample that they studied was about 65%, so a majority. These children were secure, explorative, happy. Their mothers, and that was 1960s from I would say the primary caregiver was quick, sensitive, consistent. The children's, what they appeared to show was that they believed their trust and trusted that their needs would be met. The next level, avoidant attachment, was a smaller percentage, 20%. These children were not very explorative, emotionally distant. This is when they were little. Their parents were disengaged, and the child appeared to subconsciously believe that his or her needs probably won't be met. Ambivalent attachment, that's the next level down, 10 to 15%. These children seemed anxious, insecure, angry as a general rule. Their primary caregiver was inconsistent, sometimes sensitive, sometimes neglectful. And the child seemed to be responding to their environment as if they couldn't rely on his or her needs being met. And then the last level of attachment was what they called disorganized attachment. These children looked depressed, angry, completely passive, unresponsive. Their primary caregivers were extremely erratic, frightening or frightened, passive, intrusive, unstable. And these children seemed sincerely confused with no strategy of how to meet his or her needs. So what happened to these children when they grew up? So this slide looks at that. These same levels of attachment style on the left side of this slide. Now we walk through to the resulting adult characteristics that they found when they did this longitudinal study on these kids. They found that children who had this secure style of attachment were able to create meaningful relationships, were empathetic. Remember that word, because it's part of emotional competence. They were able to set appropriate boundaries. The avoiding group were, as they grew up, avoided closeness or emotional connection. They were more distant, critical, rigid, intolerant. The ambivalent group was anxious, insecure, controlling, blaming, erratic, unpredictable, sometimes charming. Right? The disorganized attachment group grew up to be chaotic, insensitive, explosive, abusive, untrusting, even while creating security. And I just make a side comment that I do a lot of forensic evaluations and work with people who committed a lot of crimes. And boy, you see a lot of people in their history that suggest that they have a very disorganized kind of attachment. And you see these adult characteristics that are described here: chaotic, insensitive, explosive, and so forth. So this is why attachment is important. We want secure attachments, right? Obviously, the outcome is better. So how do we get that? We've got some headwinds here. So let's talk about social media as another factor. So has anybody ever seen this scenario? Right? You walk into any coffee shop in Rapid City and you will see this. And it won't be just, it'll be like And unfortunately, it's not just young adults, it's also little kids now. And little kids are, as glued to their iPhones or whatever social media they've got as anybody. Unfortunately, it's all day long, all the way through school. This says what I think you all know. This is more obvious now than it was in 2018 when I put this slide together. Social media has taken over. It is a way that it is where people spend the majority of their time. How many times, just raise your hand, how many fingers, have you looked at your cell phone today for a text message or a Facebook post? I'm just betting that most people it's more than that. And we have some better control, maybe, right? Maybe not. I wonder about myself because when I have a chance, I look, there might be something I need to respond to. So, even in psychotherapy now, people are saying this sort of thing. Let's try focusing on your posts that do receive comments. You actually see people come in because they are slighted for their posts or disrespected. Again, this is actually an outdated slide. It's the numbers are higher for Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and so forth. So social networking, this is also accounts for 28% of all media time spent online. And users between 15 and 18 spend at least 3 hours per day on average using platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And this was before the pandemic. Okay. 18% of social media users can't go a few hours without checking Facebook, and 28% of iPhone users check their Twitter feed before getting out of bed in the morning. So why is that important? Thinking back about emotional intelligence and attachment and empathy, I want to think about social media and the empathy deficit. So first, what is empathy? It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. The ability for me to look at you, to be with you, and to think, yeah, he's sad, she's happy, something like that. Synonyms are compassion, sympathy, pity, feeling, concern, considerateness, and so forth. You get the idea. This is a cartoon showing the adolescent. I know how you must feel. And the lady on the right says, or on the right says, do you, Susan? Do you really? Because I don't see a raccoon currently mauling their head. Well, yeah, so this is a mistaken understanding of empathy. Because with empathy, you don't have to actually have the raccoon on your head to empathize with the person who's got the raccoon. This is another slide. A psychotherapist talking to their client, a cat, said, when was the last time you heard for someone else's happiness? Again, when was the last time you felt empathy, right? And here's, two guys who, really didn't know exactly how the other one felt, right? This isn't exactly empathy, they actually didn't know. That's the difference. So why is empathy important? Remember we talked about emotional intelligence. It's a set of skills hypothesized to contribute to the accurate appraisal and expression of emotion in oneself and others, the effective regulation of emotion in oneself and others, and the use of feelings to motivate, plan, and achieve in one's life. Empathy is the cornerstone of emotional IQ. Empathy allows one to accurately appraise the emotions of others and is closely connected to accurate appraisal of emotions of oneself. So if I can understand how you might be feeling, I can begin to understand better how I am feeling. They're similar psychological processes. And my argument is that empathy requires nonverbal behaviors, like eye contact, looking at facial expression, posture, affect, tone of voice, hearing everything, not just the words, the ums and the grunts and the other things that go along with your speech. Your response, how do I feel? the words they said. So, my argument is that empathy is learned through nonverbal behaviors, and without it, you're not having an opportunity to really learn how to be empathetic. And social media is a nonverbal, or excuse me, is a verbal-only environment. You don't see the person you're talking to in general. It's all words or emojis and stuff like that. So, learning the skills to assess nonverbal behaviors requires physical interaction that you have to be with people. You can't just be with them on a screen. And there are things like early childhood interactions with parents, right? Hugely important part of learning nonverbal skills, or caregivers. Unsupervised play, fun with your friends on the playground or in the woods, whatever you're doing. Supervised play, being on a team. Teamwork is another one where you learn nonverbal interactions. If you're playing basketball, you might say a few things to each other, but you're really, looking to see, I'm bringing the ball off the court, I'm looking to see, is my forward, is he moved? Maybe I shouldn't pass it to him, but maybe there's somebody else who looks like they've got more energy, or somebody who's saying, I'm ready, I'm hot, give me the ball. You notice that, just as an example. And then relationships, of course, romantic relationships, and other kind of relationships, friendships as adults are great situations to learn nonverbal interaction. And as I said before, the social media interface is intentionally spare and abbreviated. And ironically, it's not social. It's just words, pictures, videos, emojis. So the more social media, the less time spent in person-to-person interactions. I think can't be any other way. That results in less empathy or less ability to accurately appraise the emotions of others and oneself. So let's talk about video games. Does anybody have a kid in their family or their extended family who likes video games? Anybody who doesn't? Maybe there's probably somebody. So they're an issue, right? They sort of take the social media issue and extend it a little bit. So the World Health Organization has classified compulsive video game playing as a mental health condition. Problems that we know are associated with video game addiction. There's studies that show us with each of these. Depression, low self-esteem, and social anxiety. Poor health because physical activity is limited. You're sitting and looking at the screen. Family conflict often related to time spent gaming. Finances, money spent on games and can cost money, and then the job performance may deteriorate because you need to get out and get back to your game. And certainly academics can be a problem. During the pandemic, the typical college student that I saw who was doing learning from home would sleep until about noon or 1 o'clock. They'd get up, do whatever classwork they had. They'd start gaming from about 9 or 10 and game until 3 or 4 in the morning. And then they'd stop and go to bed and do that. It was really, I saw several kids with that pattern. It's kind of fascinating. And then interpersonal problems, another issue. One-on-one contact with others is limited. We don't know what other people are thinking because we're tied to the video game. Lower social competence and increased impulsivity are risk factors for becoming pathological gamers. So this group of people who are already somewhat socially competent, and other children who biologically are less socially competent, like kids with autism spectrum disorders, or prodromal schizophrenia, or personality disorders, are at higher risk for becoming pathological gamers. And then people with impulsivity like ADHD also are at higher risk. So the fifth factor I want to think about is fear of our neighbors. So this graph caught me kind of by surprise in a way. I didn't know this. So between 1995 and 2014, violent crimes in America really went down quite a bit. You can see this. Homicides per 100,000 Americans also went down quite a bit. So this is good news, right? So why are we afraid of our neighbors? The risk of crime is less. The risk of homicide is less. Well, unfortunately, there's a steady rise of U.S. gun deaths that kept going up and continues to go up. Just happens here when guns became more easy to get around the late 1990s. And mass shootings have gone up. No matter looking at a variety of data systems, they've really gone up since 1980 to the present time. And so in both of those, both gun deaths and mass shootings are things that get a lot of news. So we hear about them, and with everybody so involved with the media, they are more a part of our lives and more scary than perhaps. They're scary events, but we pay attention to those rather than the fact that violent crime and homicide overall have decreased. So just an interesting quote I thought. It was an interview with Robert Siegel, NPR, Nikki Usher at George Washington University. And Usher just said the media is reporting crime more and in new ways. The more people consume bad news in the world, she explains, the more they believe it is more dangerous than it really is. I'm not saying the world isn't dangerous, but it may not be as dangerous as we perceive it due to the focus on the bad parts and that's shootings. Another issue I think is really worth thinking about. It's a hard one to address too. I think we have too much structure there. Why? So that is why when we talk about failure, I think it's a hugely important thing for child development. Several studies document the reduced replay over the second half of the 20th century. So it appears that statistically that people don't go out and play in the neighborhood until they're home and come home. People do that less and less, probably because of fear of our environment. Studies also show an increase in depression, anxiety, and narcissism, consistent with what we discussed earlier in this talk. You guys saw those graphs where depression went up and suicide went up and all that stuff. This Gene Twang, who's this generational psychologist, who's been thinking about this Gen Z. Her research suggests that anxiety, depression, feelings of helplessness, and narcissism have increased in young people in a linear manner that seems to mirror the decline in play. And she's got a little book out that has all these graphs, but she looks at every symptom of mental health care and diagnoses. And with that group, everything goes up, except for alcohol use and increased sexual behavior. So loneliness, feeling of estrangement, you name the description that would make you feel that anxiety, the alcohol. She talked about a model thinking about extrinsic versus intrinsic goals to explain the general ties in psychopathology. So intrinsic goals come from within oneself. You develop competence in activities that you enjoy, like making friends, finding meaning in life, pursuing a heartfelt religious path. Those are examples of intrinsic goals. Extrinsic goals are goals imposed on the self by others, like goals that I impose on my kids, like get A's. There are things like getting high grades in school, making lots of money, achieving high status, and looking good to others. There's been a shift over time, according to Twin, from intrinsic toward extrinsic values in the culture at large, and among young people in particular, promoted probably by mass marketing, consumer goods through television, internet, social media, that kind of stuff. The pursuit of intrinsic goals at the expense of intrinsic goals correlates with the increased anxiety and depression. With extrinsic goals, the actions to attain them are typically seen as unpleasant chores. You gotta study harder. You gotta, spend an extra half hour putting your makeup on so you look better. And the connection between the actions and the ends is not always certain. You don't even know if it's going to help. I wanted to show you a little bit of this. This is an infant that has never crawled before. This is the first time she crawls. I think it's an interesting example of an intrinsic goal. She's decided she wants it. She wants that walk, right? And look at the satisfaction she gets. It's good. Good job. But it was a very primitive example of intrinsic goals. But I think something that's very important, something we should think about for kids is things we should seriously think about for ourselves. So how does play promote children's mental health? Well, play and free play in particular helps children develop intrinsic interests and competency. If my mom says to me, go outside and play in the yard or something, I'm going to go out and do something. I might be bored, but eventually I might think, well, I'm going to build a fort. Or I'm going to throw a ball in the air and go chase it. Or I'm going to find my friend next door and see if he'll pick a football team. It helps children learn how to make decisions, to solve problems, because they're left to make the decisions themselves, right, when they're doing free play. And this helps them learn how to solve problems, exert self-control, follow rules. It helps children learn how to regulate their own emotions. If they pitch a fit when they're by themselves, nobody sees it, right? They've got to figure out what to do if they, poke themselves in the arm with a stick and it hurts. You can scream and cry, but ultimately it's you who got to do it. It helps children make friends, learn how to get along with others as equals, and it helps children experience joy, just like that little girl I just showed you. I thought that was a great example of 9-month-old joy. So there's this psychologist named Peter Gray who wrote that there was a decline of play in the psychopathology in children and adolescents. He said, a world that acknowledges the value of children's play and allows it to happen is a world that says, yes, it's okay to do what you want to do, okay to pursue intrinsic goals. Not just for the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old, but for me as a 67-year-old. If I've got that in my mind, I can say, what do I really want? What do I really want? And go after it. Further, it says, a world that orients children toward building grade point averages and resumes for absolute future being is a world that says, in fact, life is a chore. You are always striving for something in the future. We're not even quite sure what it is you're striving for or why, and you have no guarantee of achieving it. That sounds kind of bleak, huh? No wonder there's one question from that. More intrinsic actions. I just wanted to show you this. This is, I think, a typical Saturday afternoon T-ball experience for young kids. See there, they're playing T-ball, that sounds great. But just also notice, is this free play? Right? I mean, there's 3 refs and 3 coaches for 5 kids. You can see this guy in the front who's like, okay, I gotta smooth out that stroke, you gotta follow through, whatever, he's pushing this thing. And she doesn't, she's trying to do what he says rather than just sitting out there and hitting the ball. Reminds me of, there's a book called Interlegal Tennis that was on years ago. And it was interesting because it kind of finally said, just go out and hit the ball. You'll figure it out if you hit the ball. And then look at this. This is Obviously an older era. Obviously there's no coaches. Obviously it's not a field that is manicured. They probably follow a tree stump and call it home plate. They might have first base, the tree on the right side, and second base is a curve. And they might say, well, not even do third base. You don't need a person to do first and second base at all. Then he hits the ball and he runs, and there's a tie at first base, and there's an argument. There's no umpire to tell them what to do. So they got to figure it out. They've got to discuss this, and then they might say, well, okay, well, you win this time, but next time we think it's a tie, or something. And there's some kind of negotiation that goes on. Really is teaching kids how to interface with each other, how to work through a problem, how to problem solve. And this is some girls playing ultimate frisbee, joint, extending themselves. It's not just that they're goofing around. These are girls who are really going for it. They're stretched out to try to catch that frisbee. They are, even though it's a free play situation, it's ultimate frisbee. Really, there's no refs in ultimate frisbee. The teams, there's some rules that they kind of sort out if you're following or not. But it's really more of a free play setting than other sports. So other problems which may be related to lack of free play, these are sort of obvious. Child obesity, which is another epidemic. The epidemic of type 2 diabetes, even in children. Decline in general fitness. I heard the other day that 23% of young adults aren't mental or aren't physically capable of passing the physical requirements to enter the military right now. Interesting. It's pretty low percentage for 20-year-olds. I mean, come on. And then a high rate of attention deficit disorder. So less structured time in children's daily life predicts improved self-directed executive function, according to this paper in Frontiers of Psychology. And executive functions are really critical for life success. It's the ability to plan ahead, to phase shift, to think about one thing for a while, set that aside, and think about something else, and then come back. It's the ability to make judgments. It's the ability to work through problems. It's not just remembering things like just raw cognition. It's the ability to process through things with other people. And children with worse executive function go on to develop poor health, wealth, and social outcomes in adulthood. So it's really key. And so we got to think about how do we develop executive function. The kids playing t-ball, I don't know that they were being challenged in that way. They were being told what to do. They didn't have to figure it out. The kids were just in the playground or on the street playing ball, probably had to. So those are just metaphors. I'm not picking on either of those because I think t-ball is great. I just don't think we should only be doing t-ball. We should be doing free play also. And then the seventh one is existential threat. And that's a problem that threatens existence. That's what existential threat is. So we got global warming, school shootings, terrorist attacks. These are scary things. In addition, we now have the pandemic and nuclear war again. Everything that is old becomes new again. Then the last one was fragmented. Social media is a form of a community, but it is not itself able to provide the richness of support and social learning that direct human contact provides. It was interesting, during the pandemic, social media actually became one of the bigger forces of community for many people. Since you didn't feel comfortable being around people, you connected by social media. And I think it was actually, in general, sort of a good thing at that point. It was better than nothing. But unfortunately, it hasn't really stopped. We haven't really gotten back as well as we maybe need to be involved with real people again. So increased social isolation and reduced sense of community have caused increased anxiety Lack of social support group that we can depend on is a well-known predisposing factor for anxiety and depression, all multiplied by the pandemic. And this is compatible with Twang's extrinsic versus intrinsic goals model. As communal and family values tend to coincide with intrinsic goals. So, we had mental health epidemic, Gen Z, Gen X is really people having trouble. And then, on top of that, we had the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. And it just took a difficult situation and turned it to shit. And it really has been very difficult for this population of kids. And you've already figured it out, right? I mean, the things we were just talking about, almost all worsened during the pandemic. Quarantine and social distancing were difficult. I get it why we needed to do it, but they created some other problems. Biological effects on the brain from COVID-19, as are aware, there's increased inflammation, sometimes long-term side effects that actually effectively are measurable from COVID. Not COVID in particular. Obviously, stress on frontline healthcare professionals. We talked about increased use of social media became kind of the way people communicated. Less time playing with friends because you can't stay inside. Couldn't go out and be with your friends. And that was true for little kids and for adults. And I think one of the worst social political issues was that it fragmented our communities. And we learned to dislike each other or somehow or another. And I think it was to some degree related to not being with each other. It's easier to dislike somebody and to think somebody is evil who you don't know. If you know somebody and you know something about their humanness, you at least have more ability to respect what they're thinking. And then the existential threat posed by COVID, a lot of people died, of course, and then increased video game use during COVID. So we saw a graph sort of like this emerge where you can see COVID-19 is the purple line. Went up and then it came down. It's still there. And the mental health needs paralleled that as it went up, so did the mental health needs. And they peaked a little after the COVID peak, and they really haven't gotten down statistically. So, quick look. I know we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes. Percentage of adults who say worry or stress related to the coronavirus have a negative impact on their mental health. Basically, it's a big number. Not surprising. To me, it had a negative impact on my mental health. I didn't like it. I was, I think, more depressed than usual. So, okay, what do we do? I got all the answers for you, so you're lucky you made it to this point in the talk. This is a pitch for prolonged parental leave to improve attachment. Again, I think we're in some ways getting this. I know my daughter, I was amazed. Her business, she's a computer engineer in Minneapolis, gave her 16 weeks of paid parental leave, which I thought was amazing and great. And I loved it. And her husband was an attorney there working for the city, and also he had 12 weeks of paid parental leave. But that's unusual. The United States is among Lesotho, Swaziland, and Papua New Guinea as the only countries that do not mandate paid maternity leave. So, Soviet Union, North Korea, China, all these other countries mandate paid parental leave, but we don't get it somehow or another, right? New parents in the U.S. are guaranteed their jobs for 12 weeks after the arrival of a new baby, thanks to the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993, but they don't have to be paid during that time. And exemptions apply to small companies, so it's difficult to do if you're not paid. when Google lengthens its maturity leave from 3 months to 5, maybe 48, new malnutrition fell by half. So in other words, mothers who came back to work after 5 months was twice as much as so it seemed to help them. Another issue, accessible, affordable, safe daycare. Thinking of single parent families, two worker families. I think it just highlights the need for other people. We as a community need to step in and help provide support. Because I just don't think that those things are going to happen. I don't see that that's possible in a world where so, really challenging education. Programs that incorporate free play and interpersonal relationships. And there's lots of good models. These are 4 of them that I just picked out. Each of these different ones give children the freedom to choose activities and to take that to play with them, expand, to gravitate toward what they're interested in. It's uncontrollable direction. I don't argue that that is needed all the way through, but I think, particularly with younger kids, that can be very important. We need to figure out ways to manage social media. We all do. It's really, really a big deal because we're not hanging around with real people anymore. So, with children under age 14, they're just absolutely not ready to have unsupervised access to social media. Parents need to step in and they need to work with teachers and schools on this. So these are just some suggestions that I make. Use an internet filtering device, limit social media use to an hour a day. Second, follow your child social media accounts vigilantly. And I'm assuming we're going to do some social media here. I don't think there's a way to just take it away. Friend your child on every social media platform. Read their texts, direct messages, talk with them about the things they're seeing in their accounts so that you can have some input into it. And educate your child about social media. Talk with them about the effects of social media on them. As they get older, I think there needs to be some kind of etiquette for how we think about social media. And that's for all of us, even including past presidents. So these are just things that we should always do when we're interacting with each other, right? I mean, this isn't new to social media, but we forgot about it when we got on social media. So never post or send anything on social media that you wouldn't want the whole world to see. Never talk negatively about others in text messages or on social media. I mean, if you don't have something good to say, don't say anything, right? Have you ever heard that statement? If you're a part of a conversation where someone breaks rule number 2, leave the conversation. You don't need to stay there. Never bully others via social media. Never post or send photos of yourself in any state of undress. Always ask permission before posting photos of others. My photo, I might not care, but you should ask me. It's a picture of me. Never post memes that are pornographic, racist. I'm sorry. There are certain posts that are meant to be shared, and I think it's fine to share those. But just other pictures. Me getting out of the shower in Hawaii, probably shouldn't be posted on social media. Never post memes that are pornographic, racist, or otherwise hurtful to others. Never have an argument via text or social media. Work out your differences in person. Do not impersonate others on social media. And remember the golden rule of using social media. Simple things that we all do in our normal relationships, but just don't happen routinely on social media. It's really fascinating to watch. Even people who are friends of mine who I have good relationships break these rules when they're talking to me, which is really interesting. And I'll go and have a conversation with them in person, and it won't happen. Text messages are their own little issue, but they're so much like social media. I think they're worth kind of grouping in with social media. But one rule is to say, except in special circumstances, view I respond to text messages 3 times a day. There's nothing I can't wait 4 hours to respond to. Live your life in between. I've somebody been sitting here while I've been talking here, I mean, come on. I can be here and be with you guys, and we can be having an awesome time together without knowing what's on my Facebook page or whatever. Another issue that I think is important for all of us to think about and to work with people to have them think about is how do we enhance unstructured play? I really think this is a big deal. And I understand that it's difficult. I remember when my kids, this was 35 years ago, 30 years ago, went to kindergarten, and right away the first day it was, you can be in soccer, you can be in music lessons, you can be in Girl Scouts, whatever. There were, just like, you had to put that into structured play. There was a lot of pressure. I remember sitting down with my wife and saying, I don't like this, let's think about something that we want them to do, and then let's have them come home and play at home the rest of the time. So I think we need to encourage people, encourage ourselves to give children free time at home. And then secondly, we need to play with our children. Right? We can model free play. My son did not want to play organized baseball, but he loved to hit the ball. So we would go out in the backyard and I'd just pitch him. I'd do 20 balls and just pitch him 20 balls. And he'd hit them or miss it or whatever. Then we'd go out and find him and then we'd come back. It was just like, when he was done hitting, we stopped. I work with children on shared projects. That can be somewhat structured. Have them help you bring in the firewood or shovel the rock or things that you can share and do together and work together on. Recognize that free unstructured time is more important than structured sports and music. I'm not against structured sports. I love them. I play them. I want my kids to do them too, but I don't want them to only do that. And music too. I had one kid who loved or who was very organized, and she played the viola. The first day she got her viola, we said, well, you should try to practice for a half hour to an hour a day. And the rest of her life, she practiced for a half hour to an hour a day. And our goal as parents was to say, you don't have to practice. you should go out and play outside and mess around. But it was quite appealing to her to have really structured play, which was practice. And that was fine. She became a good viola player. And it was great for her in many ways. It allowed her to do unstructured viola play. Now she plays a bluegrass band. But as a parent, I didn't want that to be the only thing she was doing. Later, children choose summer activities that are just for fun. Number 6, avoid camps whose only purpose is to increase skills. I'm troubled by skills camps, the preponderance of them. And I think they're sort of okay, but I would much rather have a kid go to a camp where they did a canoe trip with another bunch of kids, and they had to figure out how to get along together and how to portage a canoe or how to cook their meals together or something like that, than a camp where you spend your time learning how to kick the ball certain way. A coach sitting with you, telling you how to do it. And then try to be with your kids after school rather than fill their lives with activities. Strengthen communities. I think it's key for us to ourselves and people that we're working with find communities that share values like maybe a church or a school and become part of them, enter with them, because you need to have other adults in your world who are supporting your values. Put your children in situations where they can learn to be community members. For instance, the kind of learning centers I just mentioned, many of them are very community focused. Structured play, sports are a situation where you can learn to be a community member. Certain kinds of teaching strategies are community-based teaching strategies. Encourage schools to be focused on communities of learning. I'm sure people will disagree with me on this, But school shouldn't be just focused on learning how to spell and to add as a tract. It also should be focused on learning how to interface with each other, to be supportive of each other, to be friends with each other, and to be problem solvers with other people. Find a community for each child to connect with within their school. Rapid City, we've got some big schools, Rapid Central and Stevens. I think it's really, really important that kids find some place there where they've got a small group to be connected to. It might be sports, it might be music, it might be drama, it might be the French club, it might be Wood Creek Club, it might be something else. And I think the schools need to really take it on themselves to have a place that each kid can go and notice when their kid doesn't do it, their kids don't do it. One of the greatest things that my teachers did when I was in high school was pull me in and say, you need to, I had a time when I had some very difficult family situations and I dropped out of sports and music, and I had my basketball coach, I just had his funeral the other day, I remember this, found me and he said, I want you to play basketball. And I said, well, it doesn't look like much fun. He said, come out anyways, we'll make it fun. And it really saved my life in many ways. Make community building an important part of every activity at school. What can we do right now? We must become politically involved. Think about laws to provide parental leave. Think about laws to expand and provide expert help, daycare, early childhood education, schools and the principles of community building, and regulation of social media. But I don't think we're really doing those things so well right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed the turn in the cultural movement in Rapid City or in South Dakota. But I think our leaders don't recognize the value of these things in the way I do and laid it out to you. And I get if you don't think about the implications, maybe they're not valued too. So maybe we need to talk with them about this and help them understand better. If you're a therapist or in a therapeutic situation, talk to your clients, help and facilitate bonding and attachment, encourage unstructured activities. It's okay to say no to structured activities. Provide space and material for unstructured play. Support parents that limited access to social media and internet games. Limited access to cell phones. Encourage parents to trust that they don't always need immediate access to their children by phone. And encourage families to communicate, to find communities to connect with. And my hope is that this generation that doesn't really seem to have a rich system that I'm very concerned about. And this isn't a put down on that generation. I hope you understand that. It's a serious concern about them. And we need to do something more for them and for subsequent generations. Or we're going to see our children not grow up with deep roots, but with shallow roots, and with storms. So, thank you for listening to me and being here, and being interested in this topic. We've got a few minutes for thoughts, conversations.
I'm wondering in the numbers of the Gen Z show increase disturbing, that we have separation of female and male in those numbers. And I wonder if there's something more there.
Yeah, there actually is. Look up 20. That's what called 20, the lady who does it. She's got it for both sexes. Actually, what I remember is that they both went up, not surprisingly. Actually, women went up faster than did with most of those variables. It wasn't universal, but it was interesting. Suicide with women are going up faster than suicide with men. It's kind of like they're catching it. Other else?
No, I would just say it's been my experience in the Spearfish school districts that between first grade and second grade, they take away a recess. So they have less playtime as they get older, and between first grade and second grade really isn't that much older, but they take away a full recess.
Absolutely, and not just that. Which schools have taken away art and reduced music and reduced time in between classes, just all those things that allow for more free time. It's just interesting. It always comes up. We should, we shouldn't have recess. We should invest our money in football. And I'm all for football, but it only, affects a small group of people. Recess affects everybody. Everybody's pondering, which is great. It's an interesting problem. I think deserves pondering. We're going to get out here in a few minutes, so we were told that we're 6:45. But I'm happy to be around for a few minutes. If anybody's got any questions. Good. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.